so fucking back, dude. The boys are back.
Welcome to the salon, man.
Short King Winter.
Let's get it.
Hell yeah, dude.
Dude.
Do people think you're taller than you are because you have the traps of a Greek god?
No.
Genuine question to start things off.
Genuinely, no.
Okay.
Not at all. No.
Okay. People think I'm way taller than I am because they'll see like interviews or we'll do Zoom and I have the voice of someone who's 6'5",
Yeah.
but 5'4" on a good day body. So I'll show up to meetings or things in person and people are baffled. They're like, there's no way. I'm like, yeah.
You're
5'4"?
they think you're
I think I'm
because
taller.
you meet them in the virtual.
Yes. And it's all shoulders, all chest. And they're like, that guy's tall and he
That's
has
funny.
a tall voice. And I'm neither of those things. I'm just short.
That's funny. People often think I'm older than I am. That happens a lot. They're often surprised by my age.
Yeah. You're very wise. Like you have an old soul, but also youthful energy. It's hard. You could either be 45 or 27.
I love it. I always make people guess. Like, how old are you? I'm like, take a guess.
Yeah.
It's fun.
What do people normally guess?
They often guess kind of close. It's usually
Yeah.
a little bit older than I actually am.
Yeah.
So, but it's a fun game to play.
Yeah. I get the same thing. People are like, you sound 86, but you look maybe 30 something. What is it? And I'm like, you'll never know. I just disappear.
It's literally it. It's like the ethereal je ne sais quoi. How do you explain it when you can't put it in words?
That's right. Kind of how I describe you to pretty much everybody I meet. They're like, what is Ramzi? I'm like, Ramzi's just,
Yeah.
he's like smoke. You can't catch him.
I'm
You
trying
don't
to
know.
get better at having more of a, let's call it like CV description of like, okay, what do you do? I'm like, okay, this is what my company does. This is what I love to do because
Right.
it helps to be more relatable that way.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know if you ever find this, but it's hard to condense a human being who has a spirit and an energy to like a tagline. You know, because people ask me, they're like, what do you do? I'm like, oh my God, where do I start? What do I say? Do I just say what's like the most relevant to them right now? Like the thing they would understand? Or do I give them the full CV? Like how much time do they have? You know, because it's a long, meandering
6
one.
hours or
Yeah, exactly.
2 minutes.
Yeah, because you've had multiple arcs in your life too. So it's like, what do you tell them? You know?
I tell them the journey. I try to always find a point of connection with everyone I speak to.
Yeah.
And I'm genuinely curious.
Yeah.
I love learning about other people, what they do. Maybe selfishly, I like to do it because it helps me grow. It helps me to wrap my head around myself, my mind, my life. So, and I am genuinely curious. And that spark, the twinkle in someone's eyes
Yeah.
when you take a genuine interest in what they're speaking about is one of the most beautiful things ever. It's like, holy shit, you can hear me, you can see me. I'm like, yeah, like, dude, it's gotten me so far. I've been in the room with some of the wealthiest people on the planet, you know, and I don't see them for what they have and their status. I see them as humans and I want to know them. And we've become friends and I've traveled the world because of that. And it's been a very beautiful way of navigating and just leading with curiosity, leading with genuine like interest in other humans. And just like, you know, we're all human.
This is why people think you're older than you are, because you give ridiculously well-structured answers like that.
Thank you.
Part of it is, I think, like your energy and you have a calmness about you, the curiosity, because again, a lot of young people are so frenetic, right? But you have a calmness about you. You ask great questions. You also got the shirt on of a man who has fine taste, the watch of a man who has fine taste.
You too.
And this is coming from me, so you know it's genuine.
Thanks, man.
Yeah, we're dressed like cartel members right now.
We might be
Depends on what cartel you're talking about.
the digital file cartel. Just kidding.
Yes.
It's funny you say I have that calmness because there's a flip side of me that is one of the rowdiest fucking people that I know.
Rowdy Ramsey.
It's kind of crazy. So like I'm generally I'm polite, I'm respectful. I don't want to ever hurt anyone. But then there's this like, you know, the UK man in me comes through, and it feels like infinite energy. And I've recently found ways to channel it more effectively.
Yeah.
Whereas before it just kind of felt a little messy, and I would just like let it out. You know, I would just kind of like, you know, diffuse that energy however I knew how.
Mm-hmm.
Now it's with running. And it's kind of hilarious. Like I actually like laugh sometimes when I'm running. This is fucking awesome. I'm like, hey, you can't catch me. And I'm just pumping like really, really rowdy music in my
Hard
ears.
grime music or like house music.
House music, Afro house, like some like, you know, some rap. And it's just just running down the road and just sometimes sprinting and just sometimes in the car, you know, real loud music. So there's this like rowdy me that's like within this, you know, calm, collected, professional that I present myself. But it's fun. I actually love that. Yeah. There's that like, you know, alternative.
Dude, that is like the duality of being someone that has drive. It's like a lot of people will say like, oh, well, I want you to be driven in your workplace. But like in certain places, tone it down. It's like, man, if we think about things like ecosystems, if someone has a lot of drive or ambition, it's probably going to spill over to a lot of parts of their life, right? So for me, it's like I'm driven in my career for sure. All I talk about is business and design, but I'm also driven in fitness. I'm driven in fashion. Like I'm driven everywhere. And sometimes it's like to friends or relationships, like a little bit overwhelming for some people where they're like, man, you're doing a lot. It's like, what's the opposite of it? Me doing nothing? And then this energy goes nowhere and stays inside. It's like, I have to get it out.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I definitely can relate to that. And we're going to dive in. We're really going to dive in. I like that intro.
The boys are back.
I just want to welcome everybody. Hello. Welcome to the Creatives Podcast. It is 2025. We got our first guest of 2025. He's not unfamiliar to the show. This is Ryan Antooa, everybody. You may know him. You may not know him. We've had him on the show before last year. We had a really lovely conversation where we got to know about him, his practice, his story, and there's been evolution in both of our lives. And we're going to continue this conversation today. We're going to continue exploring creativity. Before we get into that, I just want to give a shout out to Pano Media for powering the production of the Creatives Podcast. At Pano Media, using the tools of digital video production, we aim to create meaningful experiences and inspire action. And we specialize in aerial cinematography. And this podcast is a glimpse into what we can do for you with production. So let's dive in. And by the end of this episode and all of our episodes, we hope that you may gain some value to your ever unfolding journey of creativity.
Beautifully said.
Thank you.
Yeah. I'm so proud of what you've done with Pano Media and also just the podcast too. And
thanks,
for the listeners, we'll get to this a little bit later, but I'm also going to flip the script on Ramzi and ask him about his life. And the reason I'm doing it is because, one, I think you're a fascinating person.
Thank you.
Two, so many people I know that know you know the work that you do, but I think a lot of them are curious of, you know, how did he start? And like, what's his origin story? Mm-hmm. So many people. And I know that because I'm the exact same way where people go, we see the motion work you're doing, the 3D work, the branding work, but who are you? You know, and off camera, you were talking about the fact that people connect so much with the story of who you are and how you started and your origin versus just the work you're doing. So we'll flip the script on him a little bit later and deep dive into Ramzi. And before I say anything, I rewatched every single episode of The Creatives before I came here just to get armed with the right data and the right things because I care that much and because you deserve it.
Thank you.
Yeah.
This evolution of The Creatives has been really interesting. It's 2 years in the making. We're close to 40 episodes in. Reality, I've spent a lot of money on producing this podcast, but it doesn't even matter. Like the conversations that I've had, the people that I've met, the places it's taken me both literally and, you know, figuratively have been, you can't put a value on that. You can't put a price on that. You can't buy that with money. Even if you had all the money in the world, you cannot buy this. It has to be built. So building the podcast alongside building Pano Media and the team has just, it's been the hardest thing I've ever done. It has torn me to absolute shreds. And it has empowered me, and it's, you know, I had a wise British professor in Carleton University, Simon Power, and it was one of the most ridiculously painful econometrics classes. I actually didn't learn a single thing. I just learned how to pass. And he would say, struggling builds character.
That's a great accent, by the way.
Thank you.
You nailed the British accent. We did a pretty good Aussie impression, I think, last night. We were chatting a bit. You said it was like a modified British accent?
The Aussie accent, I was told, if you want to speak in Australian, you just got to talk like it's the laziest way of talking. I'm never doing that again publicly.
Good over, mate.
Good
over. Going, mate.
Maybe you do it again.
Hello. Nari. I only know how to do an Aussie accent because I worked incessantly with Aussie people. So I used to work for Movember.
They're lovely. They're like upside down Canada, I feel.
Truly. They're great. They're a fun time. But I used to work with a company that started in Australia, Movember, like the mustache nonprofit.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, I run their social media for Canada and parts of the world. That's great. But we'd be on calls with Aussie folks all the time, and I was like, teach me slang, tell me things, and they would. So things like Ravar or like Fiat Income or all sorts of stuff. So I would just start using the accent on calls, and they would be like, don't do that. Stop that right now. And I'd be like, okay, fine. But I perfected it. I mastered it.
I just want to be one of you guys.
I just want to be cool too. Yeah, it's a great accent though. But anyways, your British professor told you that, and I think that's pretty valid.
It is. The struggle and the pursuit of things that are hard, that are your decision, has been like the most incredibly valuable, powerful thing I have ever pursued in my life.
That's beautiful. And I made a joke earlier about us being like biohacking bros, you know, because I've heard you on some of the podcasts, the one with Izzy specifically, being like, get up in the morning, get some sunlight in you, have some sea salt and some water, some electrolytes, you know, forward motion with walking, that'll set you up right. So I 100% agree. Like the hard things and the consistently hard things are really important. That's why I think the whole ice plunge and ice bath and sort of like cold therapy movement took off as much as it did, because there are health benefits in terms of flushing lymph and all sorts of things with your adrenal systems, cortisol, etc. But the main thing is you just get up and do a hard thing in the beginning of the day. It's like the rest of the day has that as a needle or a compass to point towards, you know?
You win it. You win a battle. Like literally in modern society, in a world where we're just, everything is so nerfed. We're not going to war here. We're not running out of water and food.
Yeah.
Like I feel like it is our duty to seek out hard things because life is so easy. And I understand that this optimization works really well for me and it may not work for other people. However, I still recommend exploring it. And to anyone listening, explore optimizing, explore how you can shift your micro habits to find a better energy in yourself. And I'm a huge advocate for that. For me, like you said, it's the biohacking, the Huberman morning routine. I've been doing it for 2 years now, and it literally changed my life. And it's so simple. It's so just fundamental biological functions that you would think, it's so, but our world is overly stimulating. Our world is distracting. Everything is trying to sell you something, get your attention or your energy. And I don't love that. I feel like it's robbing people of individuality. It's robbing their energy and their potential. And it can put you in a state that is just kind of like, you're just like blowing with the wind and you're like, where am I? Who am I? What am I? Do I even think for myself? And I don't want to see that, because the individuality of people is like, that is why I love people. That's why I love the world. Because, like you have these people have, like, I want to hear the weirdest ideas you have. I want to hear the weirdest shit you have to say. Let's have a laugh. Let's have a meal. Let's chat about strange stuff. Like, let's just be weird, be you. So finding ways to optimize your body, your mind, to just get the best out of yourself. I do recommend that. And I know you've explored that a little bit. So how's it been for you?
Well, before we say that, this podcast is sponsored by Liquid IV. No, it's not. I'm just kidding.
I actually didn't like Liquid IV. They're too sweet.
Too salty.
The Element, which are extremely salty. Yeah. So, and overpriced. I just use some simple Organica lemon flavored.
It's so funny you bring that up. That's the company I worked for when I moved to Vancouver.
Everything is connected.
We're all coming full circle. No, truly. Like when I was 23, the company that I got a job at as a copywriter was Organica. And they went through a massive rebrand and now they're in Zayres and all these other places. But depending on who did what, I mean, it's been a long time. There is a potential that some of the products you have in your house, I wrote the copy for.
That's awesome. I forgot we're holding the mics today.
Yeah, which is wild to think about. But I've gone to friends' places and they'll show me Mako and they'll show me like all sorts of products. And I'm like, oh, I think I actually wrote that.
Wow.
Which is pretty wild to think about. But yeah, it doesn't have to be crazy. It doesn't have to be Liquid IV. I use the Noon tablets, but you can also do like lemon, just regular sea salt. It's nothing crazy.
Just do water, man. You don't even need to do the electrolytes. I do electrolytes because I like to eat late at night and it dehydrates me.
Yeah.
And I like to like work out, and it's just like, eating late at night before bed, like dries your mouth out and stuff. So stay hydrated. But
I mean, first thing in the morning, the sea salt is actually useful because you're replenishing electrolytes and minerals that get lost during sleep because you're repairing your body. And it helps to act on the adrenals, which is nice. That way, when you get up, your cortisol levels can get rebalanced. It's also a good thing to not have coffee right away and do the sea salt before, which is great. But these little things make a big difference in our lives. And I was going to ask you, pre-doing all that stuff and then post-doing all that stuff, what's been the difference in your morning and in your health? Like, how do you feel?
So I feel like I own my days. I feel like I can have a foundation in my morning routine. And I do notice like energy and physical benefits when it comes to like physical training and exercise. I do notice I have better endurance. I have better focus. I sleep like lovely at night. I don't have any issues sleeping. But what's funny is, so the biological things, like that's kind of optimizing physical performance. And then once I kind of had a good system in that, and it just became like ritual and I wasn't thinking too much about it, I started working on optimizing mental performance. And that came down to, what are you doing for the first 20 minutes when you wake up?
Yeah.
And I understand how easy and enticing it is to grab your phone and either start working or go on social media. And I don't like that. I really, really want to just like amplify that is not going to help you. And I get it. I'm not saying I'm perfect. I still am working on this. It's a practice. It's ongoing and it's gotten a lot better. But it's just that state when you wake up, you are so vulnerable. You've just been laying fucking dead 8 hours, like unconscious. Your heartbeat slowed down so much that like, you know, may not even be measurable.
Yeah.
Like you're in another realm. You are traveling space. So when you wake up, you're very sensitive. And, you know, not to demonize social media, but you're not choosing to see what you're seeing. It's being shown to you. So then this has potential to throw your thought train off, your day plan. What did you plan? Like, and it kind of spirals in, and that has helped, like shifting that morning, what I'm feeding my mind in the mornings, enormous change. Like I feel like I own my life. You know, I make my own decisions. I choose what I want to look at. I choose what I want to listen to. And it helps me to navigate the world more aware, less susceptible to, let's call it propaganda. But you know how like people will just regurgitate shit that they saw on the news.
Oh yeah.
And like, oh, this person, this, oh, the weather is, this is, and it's like, I don't care. Like, what about you? How are you doing? What are you thinking about? What are you feeling? What do you want to build? What do you want to create? What are you struggling? Like focus on that. Optimize yourself. Build yourself so that you can actually make a difference in the world. Otherwise, you're just lurking, watching, and nothing's gonna fucking change. And like, I get heated about this because
I can tell. I don't, and it's awesome. Keep going.
Again, I don't want to tell people what to do with their life. I just want to share what I've done and what has worked for me. And I just want to help people wake up to, the next 10 years are not going to get easier. That's why I'm very like adamant about this.
Oh yeah.
It's only going to get harder to differentiate what is good and what is bad and what we see. So it just like, we have control, you know, the phones are not built into our brains yet. Neuralink.
Mine is, but you know, no, it's not.
You're a robot.
Can you imagine? Anyway. I'm actually AI right now. This is just crazy Gen Phil. Yeah, not even a real person.
It's getting good.
It's getting too good.
That's my spiel on that. And I'll continue to recommend it. And I will be as compassionate and empathetic as I can. I recognize that everyone has a different situation in their life. But I will continue to advocate for, you know, like mental health and physical health and how it will empower you in anything that you do. So
that's amazing. And this is also why people think you're like a 45 or 50-year-old guy, because you're saying wise shit like this. No, man, a nail on head. I agree with everything.
Thank you.
And you're right. Like owning your life and having agency over yourself as much as you can is so important, because social media literally exists to serve you things so you stay on platforms, so they can serve you ads, so they can monetize it and then keep going. You don't really have a choice when you get up and you look on your feed. And if it's the first thing you do, you're so vulnerable, like you said, and you're getting served things immediately that can really sway your productivity, your mental state, your anxiety for the day. We won't get too deep into it, but even in the current political climate, like just watching the news, just watching social media, it's really polarized people, man. And
it has.
One of the people I was out with coffee for
And
Ryan.
it's taken out of context all the time.
Yeah.
Just want
100%. I mean, I was out for coffee with somebody this morning and we were just talking about how divisive things are and like the fact that people do think things are like a binary yes or no thing. And it's like, man, the human experience is way, way, way more complex than that. And things are a spectrum. And you wouldn't have the wherewithal to like take a deep breath, hear what somebody is saying and really understand where they're coming from if you're so polarized the second you get up by
100%.
ads you've seen, social posts you've seen, etc.
I'll offer a practical practice to combat that derailing of the morning. Every night before bed, I did this for an entire year. Write down on a piece of paper what you're going to do the next day. And some magic happens while you're sleeping. And you start to, your subconscious goes to work. Even if it's I would literally write down, wake up time, welcome the day. That literally meant looking at sunlight. I would write hydrate. I would write, and then I would write whatever I needed to do. And I did that for an entire year. And it helped me ground myself. Now it shifted more to like a mental practice. While before I'm going to sleep, I think, okay, this is the plan for tomorrow. And it can help to combat that derailing because at least now you have a plan, even though, okay, you may be a little distracted in the morning. The plan is still there and you made the plan and, go for it. So
it's so funny you bring that up because not only do I do the exact same thing,
lovely,
but it starts with breathe and hydrate.
We are the same person.
We are basically the same person.
It's funny. It's funny how you meet some people in your life and you connect instant. And then as you start speaking more, you start to understand why. And I love that.
That's what happened to us, man.
Whether it's like similar shared experiences in the past. And that's why it's so lovely to just talk to people. Like, if you're in line somewhere, next time you're in line, just talk to whoever's behind you or in front of you.
Yeah.
Be like, hey,
how are
nice
you?
Purse or whatever, Even the angel. It's funny. So my good friend Swelio, we were standing on his balcony in Dubai. He comes out. He's like, it's warm out here. I'm like, yeah. You're just you're compartmentalizing the weather. You're putting it in a box so that you can understand it, and then we can, it's the weather. The weather just is. And he's like, but he always challenges everything I say.
Yeah.
And he's an extremely intelligent human. And he said, well, it's the start of a conversation. He's like, it's a point of connection. It's not necessarily about the weather. It's about starting the conversation. I'm like, okay, you kind of shifted that a little bit. So
we'll circle back to that. But like standing on a balcony in Dubai is also a crazy thing we have to unpack later. We'll talk about that. And we'll talk about your trips and everything you've done in the past couple of months, which is wildly impressive. But I think he's 100% right. And people will ask me too. They're like, oh, you're such a conversationalist. How do you navigate social situations? How do you even start all these conversations? It's the same way. It's just, hi, how are you? What's going on in your life? Tell me about your weekend. What's up? That's it. I have no charisma really outside of that. I just ask questions and I'm genuinely curious. There's no agenda. I'm never trying to sell anybody anything. Like I'm about as defenseless as anybody could think about when it comes to conversation. I just ask and I sit and I wait and I don't want anything. And from that, people tend to just respond really well because they're not used to having people in their life that just listen.
And do you navigate business in that way too?
100%. I mean, people ask what our client acquisition strategy is for the studio, and I go, ask questions and listen.
Yeah.
First year, there was a bit of cold calling, a bit of cold emailing, but half of it was just looking at my network and going, who do I want to catch up with? And then doing that. Case in point, we have one of our major clients now because I just left a waving hand emoji on a LinkedIn post that a friend put up, and she works for the Canadian Down Syndrome Society. Now we're likely about to rebrand their whole org. We just finished up rebranding a massive resource for them, all because I just left a waving hand emoji, a brown waving hand emoji, because that's the default on my phone,
Sick.
as you couldn't tell. And then we just caught up and we talked, and I just asked her about her life. And then all of a sudden, this has become our first national client that we're working with in less than a year running a studio. So it's like, this stuff happens if you just care and listen. And the biggest question I get from students and people I know, I'm sure you get it too, is like, well, how do you get clients? How do you sell yourself? It's like, don't sell yourself. Just ask people questions. And if you work hard and have the skills, then that will sell yourself for you if you just ask the right questions to people, because then they'll get to know, like, and trust you. And that's what actually sells it, because that's you building a relationship off trust.
There it is. Don't sell yourself. Don't sell things. Build relationships. Because the way I see it and the way you seem to see it is, regardless, the work needs to get done. They are going to pay someone to do whatever the work is, they would much rather do it with someone that they like beyond just tolerate, like actually vibe with,
enjoy working with.
Like the work has to get done. Like we all have a mission. We all have a purpose here. You know, we have jobs that are important. There's so many different realms where people need to get shit done.
Oh yeah.
And they're going to hire people to do it. And they will always choose something that's going to offer them a good experience because it's their work too. It is their life.
Yeah.
So if you can come in here into whatever project they're working on and offer that experience where you're going to empower them, you're going to have fun along the way, you're going to joke, laugh, you're going to put your minds together, then that's it. The money will come after. And that's a testament. The waving hand emoji thing is a testament to planting seeds. You know, the seeds can be a coffee meeting. It can be a waving hand. You're like, hey, it could be a follow-up, anything. Just, hey, how's it going?
To double on that analogy too, it's like you're planting seeds because you're just a gardener who loves the ecosystem, not because you're looking to get fruit specifically. People that are trying to harvest something or get something, you can tell immediately. I have it all the time. Like I get crazy LinkedIn messages and DMs from people being like, hey, what's up? And I'm like, I know you want something. And then fucking like 5 minutes into it, they're like, yeah, that's cool. By the way, are you hiring? And I'm like, oh, here we go. You know, it happens with the students I taught. It happens with everybody. And it's like, I get it. Times are interesting and tough, especially for the job market. But just asking for shit probably won't get you much. Like providing value and building relationships will. Because again, they'll start to know, like, and trust who you are. My students last year, I mean, I was part-time faculty at a college.
Which I really want to get into a little bit.
We will. The good and the hairy parts of that too.
Yep.
They would ask me, like, how do I get a job after school is done? And I'm like, okay, who are you? And they're like, wait, what? I'm like, look, if you put two designers in the same room, they have the exact same mastery of Illustrator, Photoshop, InDesign. They can do the exact same technical work. Who would you hire? And the students would like hum and haw. They'd be like, I don't really know. Like, it seems like a trick question. I'm like, it's not. You'd hire who you like more and who you can get along with the most and who's actually reliable and responsive and can manage projects well and adhere to deadlines because that makes it enjoyable to work with them. That like people wonder like, oh, well, do I just get way, way better at Illustrator? It's like, yes, get as good as you can, but also know that like there's a certain limit to the technical element. You can be an absolute whiz, like genius at After Effects, Blender, whatever, but you also need to be able to learn how to talk to people and make people feel comfortable and welcome. And that's the thing that a lot of students and people I found miss because they're just so focused on output instead of how does that relationship work.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
And I heard an advice or a speech from Jordan Peterson once, and he said, you know, in your early years, in your 20s, like you should be finding the limits of every area of your life, socially, professionally, like just push, like explore, you know, struggle, like go out of the bubble and put yourself in those uncomfortable situations. And I find for me, everything that I've experienced in my life it's there. It's present in everything else that I do.
Comes with you.
I hold it. I hold those experiences, those perspectives that I've learned. They all are there. And it just helps me to navigate, helps me to be more compassionate, helps me to understand, helps me to ask better questions. So that's really great advice that you gave the students.
That wisdom shows with you too. And I'm doing everything in my power right now not to do my Jordan Peterson impression because I do a pretty solid one.
maybe after the podcast.
I'm going to do it anyways. He just does this thing where he's like, you listen to me, bucko. You sit on your bed one night and you think about the kind of monster you want to become. He sounds a little bit like Mickey Mouse.
That's hilarious.
A little bit if you listen back to it. You listen to me, bucko. And he just uses very like Calgary, Alberta, like
he's a very
slang.
Intelligent man.
He is.
I'm sure he's got some controversial opinions, but he's a thinker, and it's important to have people that think and challenge the norm, make you ask more questions.
100%. And I think like on the subject of divisiveness, one of the important things that I think people need to know is like when you meet someone, you're going to have things that you agree with and you're going to have things that you disagree with, right? JP, for example, there's things that he's written and said that I'm like, that's really useful. And I think that's very useful for young men who are lost or trying to navigate this world in a more mature way. And then there's certain things he'll say where I'm like, no, I don't really see things that way and I disagree. I think that's part of the divisiveness of like even cancel culture too, to be like, oh, that person's totally written off. It's like, if you disagree with somebody on something, it doesn't necessarily mean that they're cast out of your life or society or whatever that is. It means you can parse out the good and the bad because we all have family members and people, you know, where they say something or they do something and you're like, I don't really jive with that. But it's worth a conversation and a back and forth to understand them more and maybe understand yourself more, you know? So I think it sounds cliche, but more compassion and more empathy for people, but also people you disagree with is merited, I think.
I think it's important to disagree with people in your life.
Yeah.
Because otherwise, how are you ever going to learn anything from them? If you're all like, oh, I like this. Oh, I like this too. Oh, cool. We all agree. And then it's like, I have a good friend, Jordan, who he loves playing devil's advocate. And we have the most introspective, worldly conversations. And it's very entertaining because he keeps asking questions and and it's just purely out of curiosity. And like, we're not out here to like hurt. Like, we're not actually going to be pissed, even though things might get heated. But
sure,
we have different opinions, and the conversations are very, I guess let's call them progressive. Like, we all learn from them because things are being challenged. I love when people challenge my hard beliefs because I'm like, oh shit, maybe I don't know, or maybe I was too confident in this and it's not optimal. And, you know, maybe a chaotic morning routine sometimes is necessary or whatever it is.
Yeah. We need to give people room to fail too. And obviously be accountable for, you know, like their morning routines, their life, the agency over themselves. But we need to give people room to learn. And that doesn't happen unless you make a mishap or two, you know? I've definitely done it in my career and even teaching and all that, which we'll get into. But if I wasn't allowed to make mistakes, I probably wouldn't be here talking to you, right?
You got to make the mistakes. Well, again, cliche.
True, though.
You learn from the mistakes.
Yeah.
I've made so many mistakes. But I don't dwell. I'm like, okay, eat the shit, feel it, yeah. And then, okay, what went wrong?
Speaking of mistakes, is there something in recent memory that you could think about, either with the podcast or your work or life, that you took as a learning? Like something you could think about where you're like, man, I didn't think about it that way.
I flew my cinema drone into the ground. My $40,000 cinema drone into the ground.
That's where insurance comes in handy.
It was scary as fuck.
Yeah.
Ryan Dennis was my camera operator, and he was just like, oh my God. And I was like, oh my God, we got to get out of here.
We got to go, dude.
We got to do the fun. There was a girl. It was like an early, beautiful, sunny morning.
Yeah.
And I turned off the obstacle sensors. I told the story on the last episode, one of the last episodes, but I'll briefly tell you. A girl was just walking by with her earphones in through the park, and just the drone just came right into the ground. Because I disabled the sensors to get a shot, and I didn't turn them back on, and the auto landing gear didn't deploy. And she was just walking by as I literally flew my drone. It looked like on purpose. And I was just like, honestly, it was kind of cool to see that. But I think it was an important mistake to make.
Yeah.
And those because you almost need to step over that limit. Again, insurance. If you're going to do something that risky, get insurance. It was lovely to have it's like an Apple Care style insurance. Yeah. Worth it. Still a scary experience and a learning experience, but you know, you push far beyond, and it almost like absolutely destroys the overconfidence or cockiness that you may have. And then you approach it with a more delicate, you know, you'll come back. As long as you can breathe still, you'll come back from it. You'll learn from it. Your ego takes a hit, and that's okay.
I've been there, dude. Oh my God. The first day I got my Nikon Z6, I was at a studio and I was shooting with a band to shoot some of their album artwork. Mm-hmm. And the strap got hooked on a part of my jacket and then just fell lens first.
Oh my God.
I was terrified. But then I was also really impressed because I picked it up and there was zero damage to any of it whatsoever.
Yeah.
And it fell from like shoulder height. I was like, man, Z6 is durable. This is great. I appreciate this. Mm-hmm. Checked everything. Shutter was fine. Focusing was fine. Lens was good. No cracks. But I was terrified. And also like doing that in front of a client was like an insane feeling. Where they're like, you know what you're doing, right? It's like, yeah, of course. And I just fumble my camera and let it drop to the ground. It's like, yeah, hard to recover from. But
that was on purpose. What are you talking?
Yeah,
I was doing an abstract shot.
I was doing a long exposure, like real long
exposure.
Trigger
the remote shutter, go
throw it, throw it in the air. Yeah, you guys don't know how art works, dude.
So inevitably, you know, you're the further along you go, the higher the risk, the higher the bigger the mistakes. Like,
yeah,
and it's hard. There's no like it is hard, but that is how you become the best version of yourself that you can be, or the best at what you're doing. You have to, like, you cannot be the best at something without sacrifice and mistakes.
100%. I listen to Alex Hormozy a bit when it comes to business and selling, and he's got some great insights. The one thing that's really stuck with me over the year of building form, and I'm sure it's been the same thing with you and Pano and this pursuit too, is delayed gratification.
That shit's hard.
Delayed gratification after making a bunch of mistakes. Because the first year, it's like I messed things up royally in some cases, but I had the room to come back from it. And I understood, like, look, this will work eventually, even if it feels like right now this is an insane thing. On a practical note, navigating CRA stuff, HST remittance, taxes. I was like, oh my God, I'm never going to understand how this stuff works. This is crazy.
Did it click eventually?
Well, it clicked after they sent me a notice of reassessment for like a massive amount of money. Okay. But yeah, we got it after that. But same thing. That was a multi-$1,000 mistake I made. And now my bank account is maybe not as happy about it, but I got to learn exactly how that stuff works. And to the T, track all the expenses, track everything I'm doing, make sure everything is remitted properly. So it wasn't the most fun way of learning at the time, but now I'll never make that mistake again.
I have a very wealthy friend who, he was giving me some advice on investments and trading. And he's like, you're going to lose money. Oh, yeah. So you need to see that loss as the cost of learning. And I was like, okay, it's a nice way of looking at it. And
yeah.
It's the whole tax thing. I know it deters some people from business because it's boring. Yeah. But I will say it's very, like, it's black and white, there's like a whole, okay, it makes sense now. And then once you understand it, then you can get creative with it.
Yeah, 100%. And also the thing that I tell people, and especially past students or other designers that want to work for the studio, is like nailing all that stuff lets you run super fast when it comes to the creative stuff you're doing. Because you probably got into this not because you want to be an accountant, not because you want to be a project manager, because you love videography. Yeah. You love crashing drones.
No, I don't.
Yeah, I'm just kidding. You love... all the work that you're doing, the creative stuff, you didn't get into it to be an accountant specifically. But learning all that stuff gives you a solid foundation to stand on. It's like you wouldn't try running with a broken leg. You'd make sure that everything is good and then like walk and then jog and then go for that run. But business is the same way. And I've even told people nowadays, like the biggest thing I'm doing right now is sharpening my knives.
It's a good metaphor.
Because when you go hunting...
Analogy?
No, sure. Either or. Yeah.
Yeah.
Metaphor, analogy, analophor.
I like that.
Metallurgy. Yeah. Something like that. But
sharpening the knives.
Figuratively
sharpening the knives, right?
Also literally, because when I want to zen out at home, I sharpen my knives on a Japanese sharpening stone. Nice. Yeah, it just lets me zen out and meditate. The repetitive motion is great. But metaphorically, because if you think about business and you think about your website and your portfolio and your relationships, even like your proposal structure, your contracts, like all that stuff, when you have it settled, you can run super fast after. But part of the Hormozy, like delayed gratification thing, is you have to be willing to do that. And it's kind of boring in some cases, and you might not want to do it and like navigate the CRA website, which is a little bit clunky to do some of the stuff you're going to do. But once you do it, once you get it set, like you said, once it clicks, you can run fast and do the thing that you want. But it requires a bit of delayed gratification because you have to set that stuff up, and it can take months or years to fully get it, right?
It's just not glamorous.
Yeah.
But it's a superpower, truly. If you understand the back end of how a business operates, like I attribute a lot of my business growth to like spending my first year doing my own bookkeeping. I did my own bookkeeping. Yeah. I did my own accounting. And then I hired someone eventually. I hired an accounting firm to take care of it because it was time consuming and I was growing. But understanding that, it's literally a superpower because, like I said, you learn it. I love when you learn something so well that you can then play in a gray area.
Yeah.
It is the most beautiful thing in the world. And you're not breaking rules. You're not doing anything illegal. You're bending. You're rewriting rules. And then you start to look at wildly successful business people, and you start to wonder, or you start to understand how they do things. And you're like, this is how they do it.
Yeah.
They play in the gray area, and they leverage corporations to shelter money from tax. And it's just like, you're like, holy shit. Like it was, it's crazy. They all do it. They all do it. They have boats, cars, cottages, planes that are all business assets. And they are owned by holding companies that their operating companies pay out. and they drive like it's. I can go on. I actually love this stuff. I love
too.
sharing this kind of thing, that stuff with people because I'm learning and I'm still trying to design my business and my life because I have a business that supports my life and I have to nurture and water the plants in both areas. Otherwise, it'll crumble and I will literally. I'm not gonna go broke, but like it'll like if I don't nurture it, it won't continue to flourish. So
it's that seed plant analogy, right?
Yeah.
And I love talking about this too, dude, because if you go to art school or design school, they just don't tell you stuff like this.
They don't teach you business.
No. And like you get out and then it's like, okay, time to freelance or time to operate a business. And you're like, wait, what? Like, how do I get clients? And like, how do I run the finances? And how do I do the accounting? And it's like, you'll figure it out. And then kids feel super lost because they graduate and they have these skills, but they don't know how to translate it to client stuff, you know? And it might be boring at first, but again, learning about HST stuff, learning about how tax sheltering works, like learning about how incorporation is different than being a sole proprietor and you can protect yourself from risk. All that stuff might be like, I'm not a lawyer, I'm not an accountant, but it will let you run super fast to do the things that you need to do, you know?
Yeah, so you can get back to creating
what you love. In that first year of running Pano, did you know that you wanted to approach it as a business, or were you just solo kind of figuring it out, thinking it would be just you the entire time?
So I had been freelancing before, dabbling in photography, working with a friend. We were just like shooting construction.
Yeah.
We were doing just random jobs with cameras. Anything we could get our hands. Anyone that was willing to pay us.
You're just doing it?
I was doing weddings. Anyone that was willing to pay for camera services, I said yes. And I did it for dirt cheap. And it gave me experience. I learned. I started to understand the value and how to communicate the value. And after freelancing for a bit, I was like, okay, I want to see if I can take this a little bit more, make it a little bit more real. So I started a corporation. And early on, I knew, at the time I didn't have a team. I was still kind of like, just like me, I had friends that I worked with, but no one that I wanted as a partner.
Yeah.
Because my mind was operating at a different pace and I didn't want to be slowed down because I knew what I needed to do. I knew how fast I wanted to move. And I was like, I can't have baggage. So I did it on my own at first and I rolled with it and I fucking ran. I literally sacrificed social life in the first year and I just worked and it was chill. Like I was not doing much else anyways.
Yeah.
So I would just like get up, do what I could, whatever job I had. I'm grateful I had some clients that wanted to do some consistent work that gave me a bit of stability.
Yeah.
That gave me some planning potential. I'm like, okay, I know I can make this amount of money this year. I'm not going to go broke.
Yeah.
I live with my parents. I'm not going to starve. That's a huge advantage too. Yeah. I leverage that as well, like living with my parents and having that financial freedom, I would call it. Gave me the opportunity to take the risk. I understand it's obviously a little harder if you got to pay for and support your own life. It's still possible. Just becomes a little bit more. There's another layer of complexity. So yeah, I sacrifice a lot. Well, on weekends, on Friday nights, the people are out doing stuff, and I get it. Like I would still do some things, but
sure.
I wasn't traveling. I wasn't partying. I was just like chilling, working, just like playing with cars a little bit. That was like my escape.
Yeah. But I think the thing that I'm picking up on too is like you were driven to do it. You weren't pushing yourself to do it. It's not like
I was pushing a bit.
Yeah.
But I was driven to see what was possible. I had to push myself to get there.
Yeah. I guess what I mean is like there's some people that are like, oh, Monday again, have to go back to the corporate grind. And like you could tell they don't want to go there. But what I pick up with you is like you were pushing yourself, but you're probably like, I can't wait to learn how keyframing works. I can't wait to learn how to use like the warp stabilizer. I can't wait to learn these technical things. I can't wait to learn more about cameras. I can't wait to learn about this and this. Like it seems like the curiosity you have in the interviews here was really present in that time too. And that's the only thing that will really carry you forward, because talking about delayed gratification, if in the beginning things are tough and you're trying to learn and do stuff, it's again, cliche, but true. That passion, that curiosity is the thing that would carry you through. I had tough times in that first year of running Form. And to be fully transparent, I was coming off of my mom's passing. I was coming off of debt from her passing and from just taking time off around that time. And in that first month of the studio officially being open, I got clocked for 2 speeding tickets.
Fuck.
both around like what I think
Yeah.
400 each or something insane like that. I wasn't even speeding like crazy.
It was just raining on you.
It was
Everything
raining.
in life was just trying to beat you up.
Truly, it was raining. The Nissan Skyline GTR was swerving. You know, I wish. But no, it was like I passed a red light by like 0.2 seconds. But when you get caught on camera, you cannot refute that at all.
Yeah, exactly.
And another one was just like a ticket, and it's like almost $1,000 later. I sold my piano just to pay rent that month.
Mm-hmm.
And my friends were like, dude, that's crazy. You love piano. And I was like, that's how hard I'm going at this stuff, though. That's how much I love business and what I'm doing. And for me, there is no backup plan. Like, I really live this shit. And then the months after, I clocked work and I got stuff and it was great. But I was willing to sell something I absolutely loved because I loved design and everything so much more. And I was like doing anything to keep it alive. And anything you want to talk about as far as like finances, client stuff, this and that, challenges, I've been through it. And I'm still here and I'm excited and I'm energized and I'm happier than ever. So even though the delayed gratification might come in with clients and financial stuff, you're going to get the dividends in other ways from the passion and stuff you learn and how you genuinely feel about your life.
100%.
Yeah.
And it's kind of crazy how sometimes like that, like you have a list of things that just are you're being tested in a way.
All at once too.
You know, like the tickets, the difficult life situation, the money, like all of it's happening at the same time. And it's almost like the universe is like, how bad do you want this? And it's okay to not want it.
Oh yeah.
As long as you're honest. And you know, those realizations, they're painful because it almost feels like a loss of identity. And I've had that in my life, you know, where I'm like, I thought I really wanted something and then I didn't. And then you have to like set it free because you're like, I like the idea of it. I didn't like the work that it required to get there. So
yeah,
that's
in that first year of Pano too, like just to circle back, were you like gung ho the entire time? Did you ever have points of doubt or were you just like, I got this?
I had many points of doubt.
Yeah.
I had a university degree and I was surrounded by my peers who were getting jobs that paid them enough to buy houses. I had friends buying houses, building their lives up. And I was making, I think I paid myself out like maybe 15 grand in the first year. Like I just paid myself some money to survive and do what I needed to do. And I put everything back into the business.
Yeah.
And I'm grateful that we did well that year. Like my first year of business, I set a target and I hit it. I wanted to make $100,000 of sales in the first year. And we did 106,000 in the first year.
That's legendary, man.
And I spent all of it.
Yeah.
Pretty much. I literally spent it all and in
back
rebuilding,
in
in the business. Okay, we need this. I literally had Amazon packages arriving every single day, little tools. Then you're like, okay. So, but there was many points of doubt where I was like, what am I doing? I should just get a job. Like this is hard. I'm tired. It's 2 a.m. You know, I got to be up tomorrow to go do this. And like, you know, like it's you're being tested. It's like, how bad do you want this?
Oh yeah.
But I knew deep down that there was something, down, like it was just like a feeling. I'm like, okay, just keep going. Like, you know, there's glimmers of like, coolness. There's glimmers of opportunity. Mm-hmm. And, you know, things started compounding. The process started being more like, solidified. And then I realized how valuable that process I built early on. I was in my bedroom, my desk and my bed were so close to each other. I had a little charging station. I had my camera bag, one backpack, and I was just organized. I would come home from a shoot, charge the cameras, charge the batteries, back up the memory cards, format them, repack the bag, zip it up. It's ready to go.
Oh yeah.
And that process, at the time I didn't realize, I was just like, I'm just trying to keep my tiny space organized, but it's still how I operate to this day. Organized, efficient, ready to go at any second. Mm-hmm. You know, obviously now it's a little bit more complicated. There's more stuff and projects got more complicated, but within a short time frame, we can still mobilize our entire team anywhere in the world to do anything. And it all started with just that like seemingly unimportant process in my bedroom.
Crazy to think about. It's almost like, and there's a ton to unpack there. It reminds me of like music producers who just start in their bedroom with like a pair of studio monitors and headphones like these and a MIDI keyboard. And they're like, okay, let's see what I can do. And then they put out something so unbelievably beautiful and just captivating that now they're selling out arenas and doing work all over the world. And that's such a cool thing to think about. The fact that this started with you in your room, small space. eyes burning at 2 a.m. because you're keyframing and you're scrubbing footage just to get the perfect cut, you know, and it's like now to know that you were in Dubai, you were in Florida, you're doing work with racing organizations, real estate. It is crazy to think about, man. Like, I don't know if you ever have this moment, but I almost feel like this is like imaginary. I'm like, there's no way this is real. There's no way I just like DM somebody and now I'm doing work for CamH and like animating things for a living and like sending that and someone's paying me money to do it. Like yeah, there's no way this is real. And I'm like, it's very real.
It's very real. And it never materializes exactly as you imagine it.
Yeah.
But I think it's your duty to recognize when it's happening, because it may happen and it may be disguised, you know, like the traveling the world, filming racing. It wasn't exactly how I imagined traveling for work and doing video work, but it was the opportunity. It was the, hey, come come try this. Let's see. And then it's hard. It's not necessarily exactly what I want to do for forever, but it's currently a really, really incredible opportunity.
Oh yeah.
To learn, to grow, to network, to find that global stage. So yeah.
Two things that come up from that. So one of the things I want to circle back to, which I think is super important, is the business made $106,000. What you pay yourself is different because there's taxes and things involved too.
It's operating costs too.
Yeah.
A lot of them.
Yeah, 100% operating costs. And like when you run a business, at least here in Canada, it's like minimum, you're paying income tax and you're also paying HST. You pretty much have to put away like 30 or 30+% for taxes. So people sometimes kind of get that wrong where they're like, oh my God, how'd you make that much in the first year? Or like, oh, I made this much this year. All of it's mine. It's like, no, it's not. You got to be careful because you'll get interest and a bunch of things from CRA.
The tax bills are huge.
They're huge.
Because you got to remit 13% of that is tax.
Yep.
There's 14% is income tax.
Yep.
Then there's operating costs.
Yep.
They stack up really high. So there's, but like any business, right? There's the you look at the absolute profit, not the total. Like the gross is cool and it's a cool measure of progress, but the absolute profit is more so a measure of like, okay, how much profit am I making? And the reality is I don't make a whole load of profit because holding money is kind of pointless. I'd rather reinvest it for now, and down the line, I'll give myself a bigger paycheck to when I have a family, when I need to support a different lifestyle. But for now, I have everything I need.
Oh yeah.
And I live within my means. I don't splurge on bullshit, and it works for the most part.
Okay, so Friday nights, 2 a.m., keyframing, eyes burning, you know, you're scrolling for pro mist filters. You're like, what am I, you know, and your friends are partying and doing this and that. I've definitely been there too, and I felt that. Out of all the challenges you had in that kind of year one or that first little stretch of Pano, was there a certain moment or a certain client where it clicked and you went, I'm on the right track, or like this makes it feel like it's all worth it?
It was, I mean, I don't know if there was a particular aha moment.
Or maybe a series of like
it
moments
was just
or months.
Seeing how I could build a company that would be an extension of another company where they didn't have the resources or the desire to do an internal video production operation. We could then work closely with people on marketing teams to support them as they needed it, whether it was a couple times a year, a couple times a month, a couple times a week. I was like, there is an opportunity here to do this. And there was also seeing that the value of video production growing with other companies that I worked with, and seeing what they were able to do and how they were able to sell, you know, big jobs and you know, $50,000 videos and $100,000 videos. And I feel like I'm still building towards high ticket commercial video production. Yeah. We're on the way, but I still haven't exactly figured it out. So it was just seeing the opportunity to add value at scale, and I have it wired in me. I know how to grind. I'm willing to work 14 hours a day. I'm willing to work when everyone sleeps. I'm willing to sleep after you and wake up before you, because I got to get shit done. So for the last 5 years, I'm probably I was in my house at home. I was always the last one to sleep. Yeah. Often the first one to wake up, but sometimes I'd sleep in, but I'd still work late. But just, you know, not letting off the gas, which I will say did burn me at times.
Oh, for sure. I've been there too. And
I was just destroyed. I was like, what the fuck have I done to myself? I'm like, who am I? What am I? What have I missed out on? And I've recovered from that. I took personal exploration in the last year to just like figure that all out. And I feel like I've come back to a very good neutral state now.
Oh, great to hear. Going with car analogies too, it's like you put the RPM a little bit too high, you're going to burn out, transmission's going to blow, bad things are going to happen, and then your car's in the shop forever until you get repaired again, right? So keeping it under a certain level for a certain time is important. And I think life in creative work is a lot like sprinting. You're going to sprint, and then you're going to sit on the bench and recover. There's nobody who would ever sprint at 100% all the time forever, because their knees would go out, all the electrolytes would deplete from their body, no amount of sea salt could save you. It would be bad. You'd injure yourself, right? So there's a certain degree of like playing on the field and then sitting on the bench. And one of the funny things from last night is you looked at me and you asked me, you're like, dude, do you ever sleep? And then I asked you the same thing. I was like, do you ever sleep? And we both were like, yes, I sleep 8 hours a night. Why? Because when I do that, I'm feeling so good and healthy in my body that I'm able to run as fast as I want. Because I'm thinking about running for years and years and years and years in business. I'm not thinking about working for 14 hours on one day and then all of a sudden I burnt out for 2 or 3 days after. I'm thinking about working the 8 or 9 or whatever it is and then doing it again and again and again. I think the biggest thing with business of any kind is like, are you resilient to get up and enjoy the good things? Are you resilient to also get up when things are not so good and keep working, knowing that the gratification is going to be a little bit delayed, but because you really love this shit?
And I will say it's okay to anyone listening. It's okay to not want that. Yeah, it's okay to want a job where you get to shut it off and have a life outside of it. Like I think that's as long as you're honest with yourself and what you want, then I think that's all it is. Just don't lie to yourself.
I wasn't honest with myself truly for a long time because man, I worked corporate for like 10 years. And every single job I had, I was like, I don't know if this is for me, but I was told growing up, I have to do this. My mom and dad's whole thing was like, get a job, don't be too crazy, get a job. And I did the opposite. I got tattoos and had a wild life, moved away to Vancouver, like all this shit.
Yeah.
And I think I was just like, man, I'm not doing this because I'm like a daredevil. I'm doing this because I have a zest for life. Same thing goes with business. I was like, man, I don't want to just do one thing. I want to do the most and I want to build something bigger. But I think I lied to myself for years being like, no, man, you need stability and security. It's too much of a risk to do this. And I was like, actually, it's too much of a risk to not do this.
Yeah.
That's the biggest thing I learned after seeing friends who were also in corporate. Some of them loved it. Some of them didn't. But I saw them being honest with themselves, and I don't think I was. I think after my mom passed, I had such a radical honesty with myself because I was so broken wide open and so vulnerable that I had no choice but to just sit and reflect and take things slow for the first time, maybe ever in my life. And that's how I learned that I really wanted to start a business, and that even though it would be incredibly difficult, I was willing to go through all of that because I love the freedom of doing this, man. I joke with my friends that I'm the worst employee in the world, but I'm the hardest working person I know. You put me in a job, I'll do really well for 6 months, then I'll just check out immediately because I want to do all the things, not the one job I have. My biggest thing in corporate was I would get a job and I would excel, and then I would go to the marketing director or whoever and say, oh, what's next? And they would go, oh, just sit down and chill out. Yeah, don't bother. Like sit and then wait for orders. And I was like, my time is literally just going away. And for some people, they love that. Like they live for, just beer cooler Fridays and like not working super crazy hours. And I totally get it. I just have this incessant drive in all areas of my life. And I used to feel guilty about it, but now I don't. Kind of like you, I just rein it into the right places, running, physical fitness, all the things with the studio, and it feels healthy and it feels balanced.
Good for you, man.
Yeah.
And it does shine through in your work and the energy that you bring to the table. And, the reality is not everyone's going to be able to keep up, and that's okay.
Yeah.
I think for me, I know that not a lot of people can keep up, and I don't need them to. So all I can do is to just, I try to like inspire enthusiasm. I try to inspire action, and just by sharing about me, this is what I do. This is what works for me. Take it with a grain of salt, throw a tomato at the TV and say you're full of shit. I don't care. Like, as if it makes you think or do something differently, I'm like, that was a good day. And, you know, being at the Auto Design Club event last night and having people come up and say things, and even just like saying I started something because I was inspired by you, and I'm like, holy shit, like that's so cool.
What a wild feeling.
It's so beautiful because
Yeah.
like I'm doing it as a personal exploration, as a desire to share and bring insight and bring value. And then you could change someone's life by just doing what you feel so compelled to do. And I, you know, that following that intuition, that feeling is just, don't ignore that. There's no such thing as coincidence
That feeling
in this life. If you dismiss everything magical as pure coincidence, you will miss out on so much beauty in this world, in this universe. It is not a coincidence that you thought about someone and they called you. It is not a coincidence that you said something and it happened. That is how powerful our minds are. That is how powerful our energy is. And I do firmly believe that. And, you know, some people may not, and that's okay, but they're missing out. There's magic.
Manifestation is a real thing. There's this book called The Alchemist by Paulo Coelho. I don't know if you've ever read it.
I actually had it locked down. I read it after you told me to read it.
Did you actually?
You told me on the last podcast.
I did.
You're like, you should read The Alchemist. And then my mom had it on her bookshelf for years, like literally like 15 years probably. It was sitting on the bookshelf. So I picked it up and read it in like 2 days. And it's one of my favorite books.
Dude, I was joking, but I'm so happy I brought this up.
You didn't even know it was there?
No, I had no clue.
It?
No, I didn't see it.
The Alchemist.
But
You're watching on camera.
that's so crazy. This isn't planned or scripted. Like, I'm very baffled because, well, one,
I wanted to show you it. I did want to show you the book.
One, kudos. Barely anybody listens to the shit that I say. So thanks. And two, I mean, what a beautiful metaphor for just manifesting things into life. How did you feel after you read it?
I felt like it was a reflection of my journey. And I read it over a year ago now, but so I don't fully remember everything, but I just remember relating a lot to the boy on his journey and how he learned something from everyone he met along his journey, and how the journey continued to unfold, even though he didn't know. Like he had a, you know, he had a desire for exploration, and I find that, you know, that wandering, that exploration, just like what's on the other side of that
Curiosity,
hill?
like you mentioned.
And it took him to places, and then he learned from people, and he gave people a chance, and he tried things, and it taught him, and he was heard, and he was, you know, at like ends or whatever, like, and then he just, it was a really beautiful story, and the omens, and paying attention to the omens, and just seeing, like, you know, in the book it was about the birds flying in the desert, and I do believe that those omens, you know, are real. They are just indicators of just like, hey, like, pay attention, look between the lines, don't take things at face value, and don't let other people suppress what you feel. Like, it was empowering. It was beautiful. I will be reading it again at some point in my life. But
you remember the book better than I do, which is amazing. But powerful book. Kind of comes back full circle at the end. Speaking about delayed gratification, the crazy thing about that book is it became a famous book well after the author passed.
Wow.
So Paulo, like, he wrote it and it didn't really click off the way that maybe he thought it would or become like a famous book. It was after he passed. It reminds me of some of my favorite photographers and videographers too, like Vivian Meyer, who was a nanny, I believe, who lived in New York and shot so much film on the little Rolleiflex. She kind of made that camera famous. People didn't find her work until well after she passed, you know? Things like that are so unbelievably cool, and we're in such a privileged time with the internet and everything where we can go back and rediscover all these things and have the access to it. But that is the ultimate book in terms of just manifesting things, speaking things into existence. I believe there's a magic to it. And personally, man, long before I knew design, I was calling myself a creative director long before. And people would be like, dude, you don't know how to use InDesign or Illustrator. And I was like, I'm gonna. Dude, even last year, I remember being in my office, looking at a coworker and a friend and being like, I'm gonna be a motion designer. And he goes, dude, you don't know anything about After Effects, like, or anything. You've never done it. I was like, watch me. And then 6 months later, I'm designing sick, amazing stuff in After Effects, Cavalry, working in Blender, doing mind-blowing stuff that I never thought I'd be able to do. And then I really looked up to people who could do those things. And now I don't consider them people I'm looking up at. I consider them my peers. And that's a beautiful feeling, man.
It is. And on our last episode, I kept saying things and you're like, have you read The Alchemist? Read The Alchemist. Have you read it? Read it.
Yeah.
And, you know, a lot of what I've learned in that like realm came from my past girlfriend, Sarah. She opened me up to like a lot of this stuff, and she helped me to be more self-aware and to kind of tap into that more spiritual side of existence. So, but then you told me, and then you just like, read it. And I was like, maybe one day. And your words kept bouncing around my head. You're like, read it. So I read it. I earmarked a bunch of pages.
Oh my God.
And I just opened it to one that I will read right now.
Go for it.
So this is The Alchemist, the boy. He's talking to someone. He said, he's talking about his heart. He said, that makes sense. The alchemist answered, naturally, it's afraid that in pursuing your dream, you might lose everything you've won. He says, well, then why should I listen to my heart? And he was told, because you will never again be able to keep it quiet. Even if you pretend to not have heard what it tells you, it will always be there inside you, repeating to you what you're thinking about life and about the world. You mean I should listen even if it's treasonous? Treason is a blow that comes unexpectedly. If you know your heart well, it will never be able to do that to you, because you'll know its dreams and wishes and will know how to deal with them. And he was told, you will never be able to escape from your heart, so it's better to listen to what it has to say. That way, you'll never have to fear an unanticipated blow. It's just kind of mirrors a lot of what we're talking about, but that like intuition, that like follow it. You can't shut it up. It may be temporarily maybe, but it'll always come back.
One of the things I joke with a lot of friends too is like, again, yes, you can learn the business things, the technical parts of your craft. Again, maybe semi-cliche, but learning more about yourself as a person, checking in with yourself, learning how to breathe and actually check in with your feelings and how you really think about things is so important. Otherwise, you're driving a ship that you really don't know where it's headed in the grand scheme of things. You're just thinking 5 steps ahead of you. But in order to actually have vision for, say, Pano Media or the podcast or things like that, you have to be able to listen to your heart, step back a little bit and be like, where's this ship really going? Like, where am I really steering this whole thing? What continent or what place or what dock do I want to get to? And you can only do that through self-work. And I think for me, like, a big thing of last year is I had to challenge myself on what the notion of work was. Because for me, it's like, oh, I need to work 10 hours every single day in Illustrator, on the website, in the business, and that's it. But it's like, no, you also need to wander sometimes, travel to Ottawa, drive 6 hours in the most treacherous weather you can possibly imagine.
Which is amazing that you're here. Thank you. Again, 6 hours in a snowstorm to be here.
You know, wouldn't miss it for the world. But doing all that to be here, it's like, yeah, there's certain levels of uncertainty with it, but you have to follow those things and open your heart up a little bit. Dude, on the drive here, I was like, I should turn back. Honestly, craziest conditions I've driven in.
So you drove in yesterday, like during the storm?
Oh, yeah.
Wow.
During a literal storm.
Felt like a snow machine outside.
Dude, I was like 10 and 2 the entire time, just like shaking.
Clenched butt cheeks. Like,
yeah. Well, I do that normally just every day. I'm doing it right now. I've been doing hundreds of Kegels on this podcast as we've been talking. There's another one. Yeah, we're strong as hell down here. But honestly, driving all the way here, I was like, dude, I should turn back. I should turn back. And this thing came up in my head, and I cannot bullshit this. It's like, you're going to remember the time that you drove through a storm to get to Ottawa. You're not going to remember the time you didn't go to Ottawa. You know what I mean? You're not going to remember the time you just turned back and kind of whatever. If the weather was crazy enough and I really felt like it was a threat, I would have stopped or maybe done that. But I really had this voice where I'm like, you're going to remember when you go and you and Ramzi wear matching shirts and you sit and you have a good time and you chat and you go to this Ottawa Design Club event. Like, that's what you're going to talk about a year from now. Not like, I turned back because I wussed out. And it's uncomfortable. And it's a place of fear for sure. But that heart opening thing that you mentioned, that's what's up. That's a form of work too.
It is. Yeah, the Alex Hormozy actually is one to talk about. He's like, I'll always go for the crazy story. Whatever's a crazy story, just it's probably the better idea. And it has been relevant. So I started working with Suelio Almeida, Brazilian racing driver. Started in the simulator world as became a champion racing on simulators.
Yeah.
Transitioned into real racing and started building a YouTube channel, built a community, an online academy. and just rocket ship. He built a rocket ship, got on it, and freaking went.
It's unbelievable seeing where he went.
It's crazy. Like literally a year ago today,
Yeah.
him and I were out. We were in Florida testing a car. We didn't know what the fuck was going on. His online academy was doing decent. He had made a little bit of money.
Yeah.
He had $200,000 in his bank account. Him and I chatted. We spoke. We were like ideated. The car broke. He barely got to drive. We spent 3 days at a racetrack just talking to people, walking around, doing whatever content we could. Still got a bit of driving in. Florida's also weird. It's just hilarious. It's just an odd place, which I love. It makes me giggle.
People tell me it feels made up almost.
It's just like
imaginary, like it can't be real.
it's just funny. Like I don't know. You'll understand if you go there. Like it's cool, whatever, ocean, all that stuff. But
Yeah.
so we were chatting, and then he's like, "I'm gonna buy a race car." I'm like, "I'm gonna buy a cinema drone." He's like, "You buy the drone, I buy the car." I'm like, "Cool," because I was at the time contemplating. I was like, "This is a lot of money."
35K, right?
I was like, "Do I pay myself and buy a house and be responsible? You know, I could pay that money could be paid out to Ramzi. He could go buy a house."
Sure.
And then I looked at the freaking tax rate on raising your income, and it became 48%. And I was like, "Are you fucked? Like, I am not doing that."
Oh yeah.
Right now, at least.
Oh, yeah.
So I'm like, I'm buying a drone. And then also like having that mirror of someone. He went home, he spent every dollar he had and bought a race car. I bought a drone. We both kept going, and last year was insane. So much happened last year. I traveled over the last year to 5 different countries. I took 24 flights in the last year.
Crazy.
And it was a test of character, endurance, adaptability, mental awareness, spatial awareness, just, navigating unknowns. And it was really cool. So where was I going with this?
I think you were just talking about like the relationship with Suelio.
Yeah.
And just how that started too. And I was curious, like, did you meet him here or did you meet him through work and being in?
I met him because we had a mutual friend.
Okay.
I had a friend building simulators and racing cars, running a team, and I was doing video work for him.
Got it.
And he invited this sim racer to drive a real car. That's where I met him.
Okay.
So it was an interesting journey there, but I feel like I was saying something before that. What was I talking about? Blanks.
That's okay. I like a solid pause in the podcast. It's all good.
We'll pause.
Collect our thoughts. We've been racing through this also. I think we're fueled by the coffee we
The
have.
sun is going down.
Yes. As I've listened to your podcast and as I've learned more about the history too, I'm curious, like you went from working in a kitchen for 7 years?
Mm-hmm. Wow, you really
Dude, I did my homework.
Thank you.
I did the
I
Google.
really appreciate that.
I care enough, man. Like you do such an amazing thing here. I was like, the least I can do is just show up, and wear the fucking coolest shirt ever. And just, really do the due diligence of interviewing you the way that you interview other people because you are a great listener.
Mm-hmm.
And then you go to the simulator, right? Or the simulation lab? Or what was the job after the kitchen?
It was shooting construction freelance.
Okay.
And it was doing a bit of freelance photography.
Okay.
And then working at the sim shop. I was doing it 2 days a week.
Sim shop. Got it. And then you make the jump to freelance fully.
But doing all of that put me in, let's call it figuratively the right room. It showed people what I could do. And then I landed my first 1-year contract with a Mercedes-Benz dealership.
Crazy.
Because I was just in that realm. I was just making videos. Someone saw it. They had an opportunity open up and they're like, "I see what you're doing. I like it. Let me connect you." And then from there, it was just a matter of like, it's funny. I remember having, they wanted to interview me to bring me on as a social media contractor with the Mercedes-Benz dealership.
Yeah.
They were going to pay me, a fixed rate every month, which was decent. It was like a decent paying job for really not like that much. Like I call it 6 to 8 hours of work a week.
Sure.
And we hop in the call and we were just chatting. We were just having a convo about cars, about rate. Like we were just having a.
It felt natural.
We vibed, and I like you do flip interviews, but not like I'm doing it like maliciously. I'm like,
same.
I want to know. Like I'm also putting my time here, so I want to know if I'm getting into something that I'm going to tolerate and enjoy. So, but I will circle back because I remembered what I was going to say.
Go for it.
Driving in the snowstorm, and then the crazy adventures with Suelio traveling the world. Those were on extremely short notice. Mm-hmm. Those were, hey, can you go to Germany in 2 weeks? or hey, can you go to Dubai next week? And so I gotta organize my team here. Shout out to the team here, Ryan, Cameron, Andrew, Felix. You guys are amazing because they're doing things here while, I'm overseeing it, and then I'm also on the other side of the world doing things. So having them has been the most amazing thing because it's allowed the operation to grow and flourish. But just like on a whim, okay, we're going to the other side of the world, figure it out, get a rental car, get a hotel, pack the cameras, make sure you bring everything you need, bring enough hard drive storage, pack your luggage, and then actually do it and do it well, and don't, crawl into a ball into a corner and cry because it's hard. And it is hard. You got jet lag to deal with, you're dealing with big time differences.
Yep.
You're dealing with foreign languages.
Yep.
You're dealing with people that don't exactly want you necessarily. Like, you're dealing with high-end race teams who don't give a shit about you. They don't want you there. Like, they're doing a job. You're kind of in their way.
Yeah.
Like, you're doing media. They're like, we have a race car to build.
They're not thinking about your shutter speed or like, oh, does he get the right angle? It's like, no, they're just doing their shit.
They're like, if we fuck up our job, this thing is going 250 kilometers an hour. Like, we have no room for error. So,
Yep.
like, so there's always resistance, right? But, things do grow, and you just patience, explain, give people space, ask them to work with you.
Oh yeah.
Persist. I am so I just persistent with a smile. Hey, can you give me a hand mounting this camera to the roll cage? I'm not busy. Or leave me alone. You gotta understand, like, we have a very loyal audience. Like 2 million people a month watch this content. It's very valuable to us. And like, I'd really, can you please? Yeah, okay, maybe later. And then eventually, by the end of the week, these weeks, we'd meet all these new teams. And just like, we're just like friends by the end of the week.
Yeah, man.
And thank them. I'm like, thank you so much. One of the best things I can advise is to stop apologizing for bothering. You're not bothering people. Thank them. Don't make them feel like you did something wrong by asking them a question or asking them to help you with something. Just thank them for it. Don't say, sorry, I need to ask you. Don't say, I really appreciate your time. Thank you for helping me. It means a lot. Because then, it doesn't sound like you did anything wrong. So
people respect you more, again, because it doesn't seem like you did anything wrong. And like that relationship is so important too, because you remind the client or the person you're working with, hey, we're on the same side. Mm-hmm. I'm not here to get in your way. I'm here to make footage and incredible stuff that makes everyone here look great, captures and documents what we're doing. We're on the same team.
Exactly.
That's how I navigate heat on client calls, because sometimes we'll pitch a design or some motion work or 3D work where the client's like, I don't really know how I feel about this. And I'm like, instead of getting my back up being like, well, I did a great job, what are you talking about? It's like, no, what are your goals? What do you mean? Dive into a little bit more. As long as you remind the client that you're on the same side, you can justify saying and doing a lot more that relates to feedback or maybe pushes back on them a little bit more, because they realize you're going towards the common goal. It's kind of like we talked about in our first podcast, like the Spartans who would stand shoulder to shoulder instead of combative with each other, right? It's you build trust that way, especially if they know you have their interest and their common goal in mind.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
You build, you put in the repetitions. One day, someone's going to call you, text you, put a wave emoji on your LinkedIn post, and your life's going to change. Yeah. And you got to be armed and prepared to recognize it. My good friend Cameron said early on, it was like episode 3, some advice that he got, I think it was from his grandfather. He said, there's no such thing as luck. Luck is when preparation meets opportunity. So you keep putting in the reps. You wake up every day, you work even though there is no instant output or reward. And one day someone will notice, or one day you will change someone's life or you will inspire them, and just keep doing it.
When you started Pano and even this podcast too, did you see it in yourself that you would go to Dubai, go to Germany, do all this stuff?
Not at all, dude.
Okay. And some people do, for the record. They're like, yeah, I saw that coming for myself for sure. Like, someone asked me the other day, they're like, did you ever see yourself doing keynotes? And I was like, absolutely.
Like, I saw things happening.
Yeah.
I knew things were going to go and be a really cool adventure, but I didn't know. I didn't know how it was going to happen. I didn't know exactly what it was going to happen. I knew I wanted to experience cool things, make really cool videos, impact people, give people a cool experience through the work that we do, through the service, like the experience that they get when they see me working, and then the experience they get when they consume and watch the videos that we make.
Yeah.
Like, I knew I wanted to do that, and I knew I could bring value and I could bring something unique to the table, which is just like enthusiasm. I love empowering people. I work with a lot of adults who do sales, real estate sales, automotive sales.
Yeah.
And I work with them on camera, and it's such a cool thing to get them out of their shell and
and
empower them. And then they see themselves on camera and they're like, cool. Like, and the next time you do a video with them, they're just pumped and they bring a different energy. And then, you know, you've maybe helped them come out of their shell. You've maybe helped empower them in their life, in their social life, in their personal life. And it's cool.
Man, that reminds me of this December. I shot 71 portraits in 3 weeks.
That's really cool.
Probably because I'm a psychopath, but also because, and I have ADHD, but also because I just wanted to give back. And I had a really successful year last year, and I was
All
really
for free?
thankful for it. No, by donation.
By donation. Cool.
So I had everyone from Conestoga students who would come in to, you know, the CEOs of national foundations, and everybody I would just say, by donation, whatever you want. One girl brought me banana bread.
Lovely.
Another person e-transferred me $5, which is wild to e-transfer because on the fees, you're probably losing money on that. Other people paid me more, and it's like, great. But everybody got the same quality of portrait. And doing that was just my way of giving back because I have an abundance in my life already with all the design work. And, you know, some of them and some of these people have become clients through the design services we offer, but that wasn't even the goal. It's just like, how do I be useful to these people? Because December is a tough month where it's winter, people have lost jobs, people want to transition to another thing. And in order to do that, a good portrait goes a long way. So it felt amazing to take this side thing that I do and just offer it to people and give them all the value they needed with a great portrait for whatever they thought was useful. One funny thing is that a number of those portraits ended up on Tinder and Bumble because I would hear from my friends, which is kind of flattering in a way,
so good.
being like, hey, this looks like a Ryan Antooa portrait. And I was like, it is a Ryan Antooa portrait.
Why not, right?
Hey, find the love of your life. Thank me later. It'll be great.
You planted 70 seeds and not like that. You
I was like, Ramzi, no.
figuratively planted 70 seeds.
Pause.
But you did 70 portraits, all for free by donation. And it's, you have no idea what, like one of those people, 5 of those people may change your life.
Oh yeah.
You know, and you just did it. And it's similar. It reminds me of the Creatives Podcast. I have no commercial financial interest in this podcast. I'm doing it to explore creativity, conversation.
Yeah.
If we get a cool sponsor one day, I will happily welcome them and I will evolve this to be insane, like of an insane production. I want to have a team running the socials. I want to do more events. But the reality is we don't have those resources yet. So if you're a sponsor and you want to help take the Creatives to the next level, draw me a line. Let's chat. Let's see how we can mutually benefit each other. But my intention is not to get anything out of you.
You would do this regardless.
You know? And I do know that it is a lot of value. I'm giving people content, high quality content that if they're smart, like you and like some of my other guests, they chop up that content and they distribute it for over a year. You've done it. Mark LaFleur has done it. He still posts clips from our podcast because you have it. It's there. And I'm happy to do that. I don't want anything in return, but I know you're going to remember.
Oh, of course.
I know you're going to remember. And I know one day there's going to come a time where we may work together. Yeah. We may have a coffee. We may re-record a podcast. And it'll either be fun or we'll make some money or we'll make something and it'll be worth it.
And somebody listens to it and they're having a shit time or maybe a really successful time and it gives them something they need to keep going, do their thing, open their heart. Speaking of Mark LaFleur, you're going to love this. I was having a bad time last year in a particular month. Like I just wasn't doing well, man. I think it was like grief. My sister had a kid and I was helping take care of her. My dad was in the hospital for a number of months. I had to be the guy to show up. I was just like in a real downtime.
Yeah.
And I was thinking about business and I was like, dude, do I just go get a job? Like, this is a crazy time for me. Like, what am I doing? I heard the Mark LaFleur podcast and it was so inspiring because he's a guy that lived in Waterloo, started True Local there. But all the shit that he was saying, man, I cannot lie about this. Like, it hit really hard. I'm not just saying it because I'm here with you right now, but this was like post-speeding ticket stuff, like sister stuff, dad stuff. I was in a real down place. And just hearing him talk about how lonely that first little bit of starting a business can be, kind of like you talked about, those Friday, Saturday nights where you're just editing and learning about workflows and stuff in Premiere or DaVinci, those downtimes of cash flow, those downtimes, and then finally coming to a place a year or 2 or 3 later where it really clicks and makes sense. I heard about that and I heard that in the podcast and I was like, dude, that hit me at the right moment that I really, really needed it. So you're doing great stuff out here, man.
Thank you. Yeah. It's cool. Like, you know, it's a platform for anyone to get to know that person. And I like to have a variety of guests. There's like just all over the place. And it's, there's no structure to how I bring guests on. It's kind of like I meet someone, hey, you're cool, hey, let's chat.
Yeah.
I find that's the conversations are the most natural and valuable that way because they're genuine.
Do you have like a top roster dream guest where you're like, oh, this would be amazing if we got them on the show?
I have a couple Ottawa like high ticket, high status individuals,
Sure.
you know, that I want to get on here. Thomas Cumberbatch from Studio 2020. I want to get Andrew Abraham, who is the owner of TAG Accounting and Law Firm.
Okay.
He's in his 40s. He's built a multi-million dollar business in Ottawa. He carries himself so well. He's a great individual. Would love to have him on. And I use his services, and they actually hired us to do some photography last
amazing.
year. So there's like a couple people there. Peter McKinnon, would love to chat with him. And just anyone I meet. Honestly, I'm sure there's plenty more people, and we're currently building a studio. So our production capacity will be evolving, which will enable us to do podcasts with, let's call it, less time and money investment.
Yeah.
And it's going to make it easier. So that's kind of happening in the background, and we'll continue to building towards that.
It's kind of like you mentioned, building the foundation so you can run fast in those areas, because the setup and everything, not everybody can see all the equipment and everything involved, but it does take quite a bit of time, quite a bit of effort. So you set that stuff, you can ramp up pretty fast.
Exactly.
Yeah.
This has been you've flipped the switch really well. You're a really good interviewer, by the way.
Thank you.
Because I didn't even realize we were just conversing. But I do have some questions I'd like to ask you.
Sure.
So I wrote down what you said last year about your definition of creativity.
Okay.
So I'm just curious if it changed. I'm not judging it. I will read it back to you. I will ask you again, what does creativity mean to you? I want to hear your
remember
answer.
the exact answer too. Yeah.
Do you actually remember the
yeah.
answer?
Yeah. Do you want me to say it?
Yes.
It's like a breath where there's inhales and exhales, and you're doing it even when you don't think you're doing it because it comes to you automatically. Something like that.
Very, very close to that.
Yeah.
So it hasn't changed for you then. You still feel the same about that creativity.
Yes. I also would extend that to other people and say, there's so many people that I meet who are like, oh, I'm not really an artist. I'm like, yeah, you are. You're designing your life. Honestly, I think everyone's a designer. You're designing.
Your life is your greatest masterpiece.
Truly. I mean, so people that say, oh, I'm not creative, or like, oh, you're a designer, I'm not a designer. It's like, yes, you are.
Yeah.
Because there's industrial design, there's sound design, there's motion design. There's also just designing your goddamn life. And even
designing your thoughts even.
Yeah.
You can design your thoughts, believe it or not.
Read The Alchemist, you could do it. Even getting up in the morning and doing things like having the sea salt, having water, sunlight exposure, walking, that is designing a routine. That's designing your life. You are a designer. And even if you're someone who's a new mother, for example, shout out Jen Bernard, who's a frequent mention on this podcast for great reasons. You're designing a life for a child. You're designing a family. You're designing all these things. So people that say things like, oh, I'm not creative. Yeah, you are. You're creating a life every single day that you get up. You just get to choose whether you take the reins on it or let it happen passively, So I think the definition is still the same in terms of breadth, but I also think everyone is a designer and everyone's creative. That's how I put it now.
It's almost like you've matured a little bit, not that you were immature before, but your definition has become I feel like you understand it a little bit more now because you've been on a journey. And you said it feels like breath or a pilot light. It's always there. You're always breathing. It could be shallow right now, but with the right intake, it could be deeper. Take it in deeply and nurture it. That's so profound. You're a philosopher.
Every now and again, I'll be throwing gems out there. The rest of the time, it's just nonsense. But yeah.
I think that's what's cool about long form content is because you find these, you say things because you're in a flow of a conversation. Flow, Auto Design Club. That was the event last night. Shout out Auto Design Club.
Great segue.
You find, you kind of collect your thoughts in the long form conversation and you say things. And then that's how we make these impactful reels and stuff where you say, and it sounds like you're so dialed in, but it was 25 minutes of talking about what our band name is going to be, which is the Economics Nutrition Factory.
Oh yeah. Oh God. Yeah, it was. What would it be now? Chocolate chip and shawarma?
Yes.
Yeah. The Lebanese legends.
Lebanese legends.
Light-skinned Lebanese legends. When I put up that clip, just joking that we were Lebanese, people were like, dude, I had no idea. And I was like, no, I'm joking. I'm not Lebanese.
Sarcasm's a bit lost on the internet sometimes.
Do we try and convince people that we're siblings at some point? Do we try and do that?
I think we could.
Yeah.
Our Ryan, Ramzi.
Wearing similar shirts too, you know?
Similar shirts.
Yeah.
We might. One day. One day we'll need to.
Well, once I get built like a Greek god like you, then I will, it's more convincing that I'll be able to, you know.
Built like a Greek god.
I've seen the traps. I've seen the shoulders. Dude, one time I saw a picture of you at an Ottawa Design Club event, and I was like, why is this man built like Thomas the Tank Engine for no fucking reason? Like,
Fucking love. I grew up playing with Thomas Tank Engine.
yeah, you built like that. You built crazy.
I had the wooden tracks and the Thomas. I love that trains, bro.
Yeah.
And then it just graduated to anything that moves under its own power was just like, ooh, that's cool. I want more of that.
It's sick. Trains. Shout out trains. One time quick. But yeah, I was like, why is he built like a brick house? What the fuck is this? And I was so impressed that I was like, I got to get my shit together. And I have a goal this year to get sub 10% body fat. I've already reduced quite a bit.
Nice, man.
And it's an awesome feeling. And it's not even just for the aesthetic. It's just like same thing you mentioned. Like, how far can I push this? How can I reach that goal? You know, it's the game of pursuit is like the fun thing to me, you know?
Mm-hmm. And it's something Mark LaFleur always says. He says, I'm my best self when I'm chasing something.
Yeah.
And it is true because, like, not that applies to everyone. And Mark LaFleur operates on like a little bit of a different realm. That guy has so much energy, and he knows how to channel it. And look into him if you want to just like get some fuel from someone who's like literally like around from where we are, which is I think it was Cornwall or something or.
Yeah, I think he went to
Just a local
school
dude.
at Waterloo. And like True Local, you know, was started, I think, at the university or maybe through Velocity and ended up becoming this incredible thing. But I think the more inspiring thing about him, too, is that people think True Local was his first business. He had things before that failed. And he openly talks about it because it's what led him to where he is now. And obviously, you know, I think he sold his shares in True Local and now he's doing his thing, I believe, in Montreal.
I think he's in... What's that place called? No, it's not Waterloo. It's somewhere around Toronto.
Yeah? Oh, okay. Well, I had no idea. But either way, it's like now he's kind of parted ways. And I think he's thinking about his own thing now and like what life looks like for him. Or maybe
he's building a really cool business. Realestate.ai.
Oh, interesting.
He's built an AI to help realtors be active on social media.
Okay.
And it's cool. And I think what's most inspiring about Mark LaFleur is he just knows what he wants. He says what he wants.
Yep.
He doesn't shy away from wanting to be rich and successful.
Yeah.
And just having a strong mindset. And I think that's cool. I think it's empowering, especially when, you know, we live in a world that tries to just, hey, quiet down over there. Like,
don't get too crazy.
Don't be too loud, you know, like fit in the mold, you know, do what you're told, do it. And I'm just like, I'm out here just like blasting music, banging rev limiter on my Subaru wagon, just driving sideways. And I'm just like, fuck that shit. I'm not living my life listening to what a sign has to tell me. Obviously, I'm a law-abiding citizen. Obviously, I don't hurt people. But at the same time, I like to get rowdy. And my outlet for that is driving all vehicles, ATVs, cars, race cars, just like anything I can drive that can just like, and then find those limits and just play and just, you know. So where I was going with this is just, like if there's a rowdy UK man inside you or woman.
Pause.
Okay, no, not like that. I'm going to be taken out of context here. It's fine.
I get you. They call me Roadman Ryan for a reason, so I understand where you're coming from. When I'm feeling the most turned up, I put on Skepta, Grime, like Dave, Santa, all that stuff, and I will just go bang weights in the gym. Pause. And it'll be great. Yeah, it's awesome.
We've already peaked, I think, at this point.
I think we peaked.
I think we peaked. The sun has gone down. It's like, it's not bad though.
Yeah.
Obviously, lighting wise, I know Ryan Dennis, I'm so sorry. I know I could have done this probably better and you would have done it better than I would, but we did what we can with what we had.
Yeah, you did great. You did great. One thing I was going to ask you, I guess, before we cap off too, is we've covered a little bit about kind of your work and how you transitioned to clients, kind of got where you are today. Mm-hmm. Was there a moment or a series of moments when you were young that drove you towards videography, that drove you to the visual world?
I was more driven to the technical world.
Got it.
And my parents always had cameras in the house. They loved love doing things with us. They love taking us to parks, taking us on. We lived in the UK, so we would day trip to France. We would drive, take a ferry, go to France, come back, have a sandwich, have a baguette, come back. And it wasn't like Paris. Like, it was just like you just cross the 2 hours on a ferry. You're in France. You can just like experience a different culture, come home.
Yeah.
And we didn't have a lot of money. Like they knew how to live within their means. So they didn't have crippling debt. And then they whatever extra money they had after paying the bills, they took us places and they documented those things. And at the same time, my father, he's a mechanic. He was working on Volkswagens. He would take me with him on weekends to go do side jobs. And I just watch him work on cars. And I'm like, that's kind of cool. And then he'd let me drive some of the cars and he'd bring home different cars from the dealership. And like, so I was just like seeing this like beautiful technical stuff. And I'm like, without even realizing it, there's cameras around me. And I'm like, oh, cool. They're becoming normal. I'm seeing a camera. We're documenting. We had a camcorder, JVC camcorder. Wasn't allowed to touch it because it recorded on cassettes and they were expensive, right? So it was only like my dad was the one who would film with it. And, you know, one day I'm actually going to digitize all those videos.
That's amazing. Yeah.
I fell in love with technical stuff. And then when I discovered cameras, you know, in high school, I was like, these are cool. Like they got buttons, they make noises. And then there's like, you make a picture and then there's like, it's like satisfying. There's something. Yeah. And then I started learning about building cameras and lights. And I'm like, ooh, we can start putting things together in a unique way, like this set and it just spiraled. So that was it. It was the love for technical, discovering there was a creative output that could be made from it, and then just continuing to explore and peeling the onion.
That's beautiful. So like by osmosis, when you were a kid, it kind of came through naturally. I mean, for me, it was a lot more forced because I think growing up, I saw people that like worked at jobs they didn't want to, kind of lived lives they didn't really want to, but they said, this is the way it has to go. Mm-hmm. Like, this is how it works in the Western world. And I was like, no. And I rebelled against it and, you know, did away with my degree to an extent and then chased all this stuff that I'm chasing now. But yeah, I felt definitely crazy in the beginning. But after I gained success and I was like, okay, this is viable, I kind of came at it from the opposite way, where I didn't really have a family that was like, be an artist. They were...
Me neither.
Really?
No, no one's telling me to be an artist.
Yeah, fair enough.
They said go to university, be an engineer, be a dentist.
Okay.
Like go to school, get a good job. Yeah. But the cameras were around, and I was in the home life. I was still had the opportunity to explore stuff.
Yeah, I don't know about you, but I think the thing my family was the most concerned about is like, can you just be stable and like okay? You know, it's like doctor, lawyer, scientist, engineer was like the easiest way to that they could see in their eyes. But as long as I could show them like there's a viable future in what I'm doing, they were totally okay with it.
That's awesome, man.
Yeah.
I think it took many years for my parents to understand what I was doing, and they didn't quite get it. Like, what are you doing? You know, like, are you okay? Like, are you gonna be okay?
Yeah.
Do you know? Like, you're spending a lot of money on stuff, and do you need it? And I'm like, I'm investing. I'm not spending. Like, I'm building. And they eventually do understand, and they stick it. But I don't blame them.
Yeah.
I was still figuring it out myself, and I think it's important in any sort of realm where you are doing something out of the ordinary to just patiently explain to people what you're doing, because they may come at you asking questions and they may be passive aggressive.
Sure.
For whatever reason. So, but just answer them.
Yep.
Someone asked many times I'm flying drones and people are like, oh, what are you doing? Oh, you can't be doing it. And I just explain, this is what we're doing. This is why we're doing it. Everything is in order, you know.
I have insurance. It's okay.
We have insurance. We're not in your window. We're not filming you. We're not the government spying on you. We're not trying to take your blood. Like, it's all just this. And then you can diffuse that with just, and some people are off their marbles and that's okay, but let them be. They're probably having a bad day.
Yeah. And like, even the thing of like buying a drone for $35,000, a lot of people would be like, how on earth would you do that? That's insane. But it's like, oh, wait and watch what I do with the drone. Wait and watch the work that comes in, the Tom Green stuff that we film, like everything that we're able to do with this for, you know, different tourism places, like racing companies, etc. Like, we'll make that back in no time because I know the potential of this thing. Part of being a visionary is being able to see things before they actually happen, but knowing they're going to happen. And I think investing back into your company or equipment, those are things that are going to make money and be able to produce work and help you produce work. So I frivolously spend on stuff like that too.
Nice, man.
Yeah.
And holding money is pointless. It's a depreciating asset.
Yeah.
and it does nothing for you. It's funny. Swelio has helped me to some books and some just people, and obviously money is important. Obviously you need to live, you need to take care of yourself, and be able to afford good quality food so you can sustain your health and stuff. But he's just like, I just see money as game score, and your age is just your credits. I'm like, what? So your age is your level in the game, and money is game credits. I'm just like, bruh.
That sounds like a guy who's living life.
He's out here making 6-figure transactions and taking leaps and bounds of faith and moving across the planet. And, I'm just like, damn, dude, this is insane.
How old is he?
He's 31.
Yeah. I was going to say, to be that age and doing that is amazing too. But he trusted himself, trusted his intuition, had a viable way of doing this through his academy and everything. It's
came from nothing too.
Yeah.
Poor kid in Brazil playing sim racing games.
One of the things I joke about with all these students and people, because they're like, oh, but how am I ever going to get to where I'm going to go? I'm like, listen, there's a kid right now in Africa with Photoshop CS2 and he's making the most miraculous shit that you can imagine because he's not limiting himself by, his equipment or does he have the right ND filters? Does he have the right, gen fill options or whatever? No, he's just doing what he has, what he can with what he has. Mm-hmm. And that's powerful. People always ask me, what's the best camera to shoot with? It's the one that you have, right? I mean, I think the Fuji series that you have on your desk is amazing. My Z6 is fantastic. Even if I had a Nikon D3000, I'd still make goddamn magic with it because I try and master craft regardless of the tool that I have. And I think that is so important because once you get the equipment, once you get the drone, once you get the thing, you'll appreciate it more. You'll have a better mastery over it. There's no point giving a Ferrari to a kid who just got his G1 and barely knows how to drive and doesn't know what the settings are, anything like that,
Might put it in a tree.
Yeah, hopefully not.
Hopefully
not.
Ryan, before we wrap, we're coming to a close soon. This has been a lovely conversation.
Yeah.
What was your teaching? I want to know a little bit. You from what I understand, you taught a semester at a college or a university?
Yeah. So Conestoga College.
Conestoga College?
Conestoga College.
Where's that? Waterloo?
Yeah, Kitchener, Waterloo, just kind of around that tri-state area.
Yeah.
I taught branding strategy and I taught social media strategy for a year.
And what did you uncover? What did you learn? What was it? Because I think it's amazing.
Yeah.
And from what I saw, from what you spoke about online, it seemed like a really, really cool journey. And I'm sure it wasn't easy, but tell me about it.
Oh my God. Yeah, there's so much to unpack. I got offered to do it based on just what I was doing with the studio and kind of people catching wind of that. And I was really excited, man. I've always had an energy of being a teacher and being someone who wanted to mentor and help, except now I was just kind of getting paid for it, but from a college, which was amazing.
Did you get offered the job or did you apply for it?
I got offered it.
Cool.
Yeah, which is great. In a pretty wild interview. I don't want to, shit on the reputation too much, so I'll leave it at that.
No worries.
Basically, the woman showed up who interviewed me after an eye doctor appointment.
Oh, wow.
And she was just blinking really hard.
Oh, they put the stuff in your eyes to lubricate it so they could do something.
And I won't mention her name, but what she said to me is, sorry, I'm late. I was going to call you and say that I was going to be late, but I couldn't see the numbers on the phone. And I was like, girl, what are you doing driving? What the fuck? And we get to the end of the interview and, then I got offered the position, which is great. But I was like, God, just take care of yourself. Don't be driving with, Visine drops in your eyes or whatever it is. So I started in January of last year and it was a big learning curve, learning how to not just come up with the syllabus and material, but also handle a classroom, and not just a classroom of students, but students who are primarily international with different language barriers and, different ways of living and learning and different ways of internalizing visual cues. So all that kind of had to come into play. And what I realized, which is the same thing about the corporate world, is I love the work that I do. I love teaching. I don't like institutions.
Okay.
So I think what I will do now, and I've since then left Conestoga, is continue to teach, continue to mentor, probably start my own YouTube channel, maybe my own academy one day, and teach through that business.
But you
design.
had to do it to understand that.
Oh yeah.
You doing it made you realize institutions, maybe that's not your place, but you had to do it to know that.
100%. And I don't knock the institution. I just know what it is and know what it isn't. Mm-hmm. The problem here is me. I just don't play well in places like that because I love freedom.
Right. And I'm sure there's a curriculum that you have to follow, right?
Yeah. I was talking to Izzy about it this morning. I'd recommend it to anyone who loves teaching, and you can take with it what you will. Maybe you love that system and that framework at whatever college or place you're teaching. Maybe you don't, but it's a good experience to have. I mean, wild segue, but I have a lot of friends who have been through substance stuff, addiction, etc., and some who've been to AA. And the last step of AA, step 12, has nothing to really do with you. It has to do with actually teaching and helping another person to get sober. Because the things that you practice and do in your everyday life become so much more prevalent and effective if you're teaching somebody else to do it. Even the sobriety statistics, right? Like if someone does AA and they make it to step 11, their chance of relapsing is so much higher than someone who makes it to step 12, mentors and teaches somebody else. They stay sober way more often statistically than anyone else. And I think if you're going to be a videographer, a creative, you know, you might not think you have anything to offer or teach, but the fact that you've been doing this means you have something to someone who's just starting out. So I'd highly recommend teaching or mentoring of some kind, of any kind, because it'll also remind you of the things that you're doing and help you sharpen your own steel.
That's beautiful.
Yeah.
That's a bit of a strategy I took in university studying economics. I would study with friends, and we would just hang out in empty classrooms, and I would teach them. I'm writing out equations on the board, and I'm doing the math, and we're learning together, and I'm learning, and I'm like, oh, okay. If I like teaching it, tested my knowledge and allowed me to practice. And I think that's what's also really cool about social media and the content space, and just, you know, hopping online and be like, hey, this is what I did. Look at this video. This is how I did it. You know, like people say, this is how I got this. This is why I did it. And it's, you know, like for if you're interested, cool. If you're not, like, that's fine. But it's an opportunity for the creator to teach. It's an outlet to teach, because not all of us have the capacity or the desire to go to an institution or start an online course. But, you know, there's ways you can have glimpses of teaching in conversation, in content, and it's cool.
I think some people realize that they're not for the classroom, but they are for the library. Ooh. I.e., they love to study, they love to learn things, but just not in the institutional places that we typically go to school. This is, you know, something that people can research on their own, but the modern education system in the Western world was predicated on the Industrial Revolution.
Yeah, factory workers.
Exactly. So really, the education system here, from, you know, elementary to middle school, high school, it was primarily created with a curriculum that was meant to have people become factory workers, engineers, people in the industrial spaces. Obviously, with our current landscape, Twitch streamers, like content creators, you know, people that are doing jobs in many different ways that didn't even exist at the time, people that work with the AI and machine learning spaces, like that didn't exist at that time. But the current education system hasn't fully pivoted or shifted in a way that fully reflects where we are now. It's a massive ship to turn, right? So what I find now is people are realizing, oh, if I don't exactly enjoy school, that's okay, but I do enjoy learning. What do I really want to learn about and put time into, you know? And I think with the internet, Skillshare, all the things we have available, YouTube, the fact that someone, i.e. me, can go from not knowing anything about motion design at all 6 months ago and completely become immersed in that world and produce pretty great stuff, it's just a testament to the fact that, you know, we really have access to all these things we can use to learn. It's not necessarily about where you learned it from and the fact that you have a certification. It's show me your portfolio, show me your work, show me what you can do.
Exactly. I do still feel if you have the opportunity to go to an institution and learn and spend some years in it, and do it, because it's not about the curriculum. It's about the character. It's about the friendships. It's about the struggles. It's about the weird British professors that
Mr. Power
later in life
there you go.
Learned he was a regular at the restaurant I would eat at, or I would work at, and he would eat brown toast and over medium eggs with no home fries every day. Not every day, every time he visited. And he didn't even realize I was serving him food.
Wow.
But I would see him through like the little window. But all that said, like post-secondary, like going to university for me, the curriculum, a lot of it was valuable because I learned economics, taxation, and accounting. But majority of it, you put me in that classroom, write an exam, I'll fail them all probably. Without studying, I would fail them all. So, but what I learned, how to navigate, how to like approach a seemingly impossible problem and find a solution for it, that like really hard math stuff that I was doing, all of that, it's hard to replicate on your own. And I feel like an online course, while it can teach you a lot, it may not teach you grit.
Yeah. And like coming up against tasks and things that you normally wouldn't in like an online world, but do in a school setting, which makes a lot of sense. Dude, I thought my nutrition degree would be useless from here on out, and I don't reference it a ton, but the other day I was walking around my office and a guy was telling me about a product he was creating, digestive enzymes to, help people who have digestive issues go through things. All of a sudden I was like, oh, make sure the capsules are enterically coated because that way they'll actually get to your system and not degrade under the hydrochloric acid. And the guy was like, what the fuck did you just say? And I was like, oh shit, sorry. I just disappeared into my studies for a second. And he went, what studies? And I was like, oh, I took nutrition.
That's so funny.
Nutraceutical sciences in my undergrad. And he was like, we need not only branding help, but branding help with somebody that actually understands this world. Would you be interested? And I was like, yeah, dude, absolutely. So like you said, those things that you don't think will come in handy can and do.
It's funny. I had a similar experience where I was chatting with one of the guys at Mercedes earlier today, and he was saying what is a tax write? Like, what is a tax write-off when you buy something and it's like a business expense? And I went off, and he was like, oh shit. I told him, when you purchase an asset, you get to depreciate that asset, claim that as an expense, drive your company's income lower, pay less income tax. You get to write off the HST, which offsets the HST that you collected on your sales. You then remit less HST, and you get to use pre-tax money to buy something, and you evolve your business by investing. And he was just like, oh, okay.
Yeah, cool.
He's like, that kind of makes sense. And I was like, okay, I kind of understand this stuff a little bit.
And you only know that by going through the trenches of making a business, doing expenses, tracking everything, seeing how it all works out.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Ryan, before we wrap up, I want to ask you something. This is a new question.
Oh, hell yeah.
This is a new question that I plan to ask everyone. What do you What do you romanticize the shit out of?
Just our relationship. No, what do I romanticize the shit out of? What a great question.
Thank you.
I mean, the first answer that comes to mind is my life and all the elements of it, not just the cool things like me driving to Ottawa and then coming here and meeting up with people and having coffee and drinks and that romantic thing, but romanticizing coffee in the morning, romanticizing friendships, romanticizing how I live my life. And a question I ask myself really often, as cheesy as it might sound, is when I'm in the really deep, dark, fucked up, hard moments, I ask myself what the hero of the story would do. I ask myself what the maxed out version of me, the most aggressive, brolic version of me would do. And then I just do my best to go do that thing. And I don't nail it every time, but romanticizing my life is viewing myself as the hero of my own story and thinking about what I would do to honor that and what I would do to honor my own potential. So for me, what I want to romanticize the shit out of is my own life and existence, and romanticize the way that I can impact other people, loop people along, bring people along for the ride, and just design my actual life.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
I'm going to ask this question to every single guest I have. I love it.
And if they don't say our friendship, then just kick them off immediately.
I'll have a trap door on the couch. Just drop down. Ryan, thanks, man. That was almost 2 hours of talking and
flew by. But I want to say too that you're an absolute gem and you're doing something incredible here. And
thanks, man.
Not just because we're friends, but you're a great interviewer. You're a great human being. I cannot wait to see where you are a year from now, whatever country that you're in, doing amazing work. It's only up from here for you, honestly.
Thanks, man. Yeah. I will continue to stick to my fundamentals. I'll continue to work. I will never tell someone to do something that I will not do myself. Everything I say, I'm practicing it myself, and I'm learning. I'm unfolding. I'm experiencing life for the first time.
We all are.
So I will continue to share my journey. I will continue to create beautiful images, record beautiful audio, enable experiences for everyone involved, clients, team, contractors, employees, everyone that's involved. I want to build. I want to make magic because the world is freaking magical, genuinely. And I'm very grateful that this, realm of video production is my opportunity to show people how I see the world. And it's, I romanticize the shit out of everything, and that's brings me enthusiasm, and just carry on.
You're a gem, and we can tell you bring that enthusiasm to everything you do, and we can see it.
Thanks, Ryan.
And it's valued.
And thank you for listening. Genuinely, everyone listening, even you, any feedback, even if you don't explicitly say it, if you're listening and you're chilling and you're vibing in your studio, wherever you are, whenever you are, thank you for listening. It's my absolute honor to bring you people like Ryan Antooa and all the other amazing guests we've had and all the future guests that we will have. It's a pleasure to chat with them and then share, these conversations with you, and it's a stamp in time. This is where we are, what we're thinking at this point in time, and I didn't know you'd be back. I had an inkling that you would come back on the show, and a year later, here we are, and it's cool. It's who knows what'll happen. I guess the endless possibilities are what make being a human exciting.
I would never drive 6 hours in a storm to do anything else. But if it involves the Ottawa Design Club and it involves you, absolutely.
Thank you. That is an honor, truly. And I encourage you to spark a conversation about creativity with someone in your life, even with yourself. I go on walks and talk out loud to myself, and I am not ashamed of that. Just do it. Like you'll be amazed how much you can get to know yourself when you just spend time with yourself, uninterrupted time with yourself, without just like put everything away. Be with yourself. So I encourage you to be weird as fuck and to just explore and keep going. Plant the seeds. Do as many things as you have capacity for. Find ways to optimize your mind and your body and reap the benefits as they will inevitably come. So thank you. Share this with someone that maybe we'll put it on a t-shirt one day.
Maybe we will.
Maybe I will have an event one day. I would like to have a TheCreatives event.
I so badly, and I would have done it this time, but I was slow on time, wanted to design you a custom shirt that was F1 style with just pictures of yourself and like your cat on it. Just saying like Lebanese legend and like, the diamond encrusted typography, like old 2001 like band t-shirt style.
That's awesome.
Next time.
Yeah. I think we have a lot more to talk about.
Yeah.
I feel like we just scratched the surface.
We really did. In 2 hours, we scratched the surface, but we'll talk about Roadman Ramzi, which is probably going to be the shirt name that you have. And we'll talk about a lot more. I'll be back for sure.
Thank you, man. Maybe I'll have to come visit you in Waterloo.
Hell yeah.
Form Studio. Ryan, before we wrap up here, where can people find you? What do you operate under? What do you offer the world?
I'm a DM away.
Mm-hmm.
I'm at Ryan Antooa on everything. The formstudio.ca for our website, which is currently under construction, but you can see some of the previous work that we've done. And I am very, very easy to get a hold of, even though people think I'm a bit mysterious because I just do very random things like drop an album that I created in one night or go teach and lecture or put out 4 poetry books with a 5th and 6th on the way. But
I made a poetry book.
I wrote 4.
I'd love to read that.
Yeah, I'll send them your way.
Cool.
Just on the house. Honestly, they were influenced a lot by The Alchemist and Rumi and a lot of poets that I loved, but did that, shut that arc off, and now I'm here in my winter arc where I'm just training like a motherfucker and having a good time. But if you want to find me, I'm a DM away, Ryan Antooa on everything.
Everything down below. I'll link it all.
Happy to chat and happy to be here, man.
Thanks, man. Thank you. Love you.
Love you.
Bye.
Bye.